Welcome to This Explainer. You know that heavy, crushing feeling of existential dread? Today, we're going to decode it by mapping dense philosophy directly onto our own biological wiring. If you've ever felt the overwhelming weight of existence and wondered where exactly that feeling comes from, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to bridge the gap between profound philosophical suffering and the concrete mechanics of your nervous system. Okay, let's dive into this fascinating question. What if your deep philosophical suffering is actually just your brain misinterpreting a bodily signal? Think about that for a second. We tend to believe our existential crises are entirely intellectual, born from wrestling with the universe. But what if they literally start with a simple flutter in your stomach or a bit of tension in your shoulders?
We are tackling some massive questions today, but don't worry, we've got a clear map. We'll start with the two languages of suffering, then explore Heidegger, Sartre, and Kierkegaard, and finally wrap up by mastering metaphysical literacy.
Let's jump right into section 1, two languages of suffering. We're translating philosophy into mechanics. Think of this as the ultimate duality. On the left, we've got metaphysical language. This is the poetry, right? The heavy, intuitive, felt experience of suffering. It has serious weight and resonance. But on the right side, we have mechanistic language. This is all about precision, clinical actionability, and mapping the exact physiological layers where things actually break down. Philosophy gives us the profound feeling of the suffering, but biology and mechanics give us the exact tools to fix it. We really need both. So here's our translation key. We start down at the ontic level. That's layer 0 through 2. You can think of this as a physical hardware glitch in your body, like autonomic nervous system states or physical pain. Now that bodily glitch travels up to layer 3, the ontological layer. Here, your brain flashes a terrifying software error message to explain it, creating a whole interpretation of reality. But here's the catch. It completely forgets it's just an interpretation. Finally, if you repeat this enough, it locks into layers 7 and 8, the existential layer, and crystallizes into your actual identity. So ontic pain becomes an ontological reality, which turns into an existential identity. Moving to section 2, Heidegger and groundless Angst. Let's see how this dread builds when the body feels completely unanchored. So Martin Heidegger was totally obsessed with this concept of being. He basically thought modern humans had forgotten what it even means to be, which leaves us with this free-floating dread he famously called Angst. It's a state where the everyday world of meaning simply evaporates into nothing and nowhere. It's exactly like that sudden stomach-dropping feeling when you reach for your wallet and it's just not there, but, applied to existence itself. But where does that actually come from? Let's break this down mechanistically. Step 1. Heidegger's body was physically unstable. We're talking chronic nervous system threat, a diffuse physical tension. That is the pure ontic pain. Step 2. His brain scrambles to make sense of this physical instability. So at layer 3, it gets tricked. It decides, oh, the entire universe is meaningless and unstable. Being itself is groundless. And then step 3, layer 5, the ontic suffering kicks in. He experiences full-blown angst in an existential void. His physical lack of grounding literally got translated into a philosophical void. Now, Heidegger wasn't actually demanding anything from the universe. He didn't have any explicit, I must do this, or the world must be that thoughts. His implicit background expectation of stability simply collapsed, creating a groundless void. The rug was completely pulled out from under him. We call this an implicit expectation collapse. All right, section 3, Sartre's burden of choice. Freedom as an obligation. Let's shift gears and look at a philosopher who experienced a very different physical sensation, the intense pressure of having options. Jean-Paul Sartre's famous metaphysical claim is that existence precedes essence, meaning we have no predefined blueprint. We are radically free and must choose our own path. But he experienced this radical freedom as an absolute anguish, a super heavy, crushing burden. I mean, if you've ever felt paralyzed just trying to pick a movie on Netflix, imagine that intense pressure applied to your entire life. Why did freedom feel so terrible to him? Here's the mechanism behind it. Step 1, Sartre encounters a choice, and bam, his sympathetic nervous system activates. Layers 0 and 1. He gets a rush of physical arousal, tension, urgency, pressure. That's his ontic pain. Step 2, his brain interprets this physical arousal at layer 3, but instead of seeing an open space of options, his brain says, I feel pressure, therefore I must choose correctly. If I fail as a human being. The open option space becomes a strict obligation. Then, step 3, we hit layers 7 and 8.
The pressure becomes so intense that people freeze their identity in what Sartre called bad faith, pretending to be a fixed object, like a waiter who is only a waiter, just to escape the terrifying burden of having to choose.
And here is the exact moment things go off the rails for Sartre. Having an option space is incredibly healthy when it's framed as a want. Like, I can choose. Multiple paths are possible. I prefer this path, but I could survive others. It's flexible. But it becomes a crushing pathology when it morphs into must thinking. Like, I must choose correctly. Failure to choose well means failure as a being. Sartre's philosophy was entirely must structured, which is exactly why his freedom felt like a straitjacket.
Section 4. Kierkegaard's authentic subjectivity, the hero of interpretation. Let's meet the philosopher who actually managed to figure out the exact boundary between the body and interpretation.
Soren Kierkegaard recognized that anxiety when facing possibility is completely unavoidable. He called it the dizziness of freedom. But his massive breakthrough was realizing that how we relate to that possibility, how we interpret that dizziness, is what truly matters. That's what he meant when he said, truth is subjectivity.
Okay, let's dive into this critical fork in the road. Step 1. Kierkegaard felt that same pre-interpretive bodily restlessness, that layer 2 bodily unease. But step 2, layer 3, he saw the bifurcation. We can interpret that physical dizziness as a want, resulting in a healthy, tolerable anxiety where we accept our limits, or we can interpret it as a must, demanding perfection from ourselves, which spirals us straight into despair. Kierkegaard essentially mapped the choice itself. And step 3, layer 9, integration, he figured out how to maintain metacognitive awareness that these interpretations are provisional.
So the secret to surviving this fork in the road is achieving authentic subjectivity. Pathological despair happens with must thinking, foreclosing your option space by saying, I must construct the perfect self or I am nothing. Authentic subjectivity uses want thinking. You maintain your option space. You say, I am pursuing this path and I could be otherwise. You hold your interpretation purely as an interpretation without locking yourself in like Sartre did.
When we put all three of these guys side by side, the pattern is just so clear. Heidegger's focus was on being, and he suffered from an implicit collapse, leading to groundless anxiety. Sartre focused on freedom, suffered from an explicit must, and felt intense pressure anxiety. And Kierkegaard focused on self-relation, beautifully mapping the choice between want or must, showing us that possibility anxiety can be handled with authentic subjectivity. Finally, Section 5, Mastering Metaphysical Literacy. Let's see how this all builds into an actionable cheat code for your own mind. So what is metaphysical literacy? It's the profound capacity to hold frameworks provisionally. It's remembering that being, freedom, and self are always interpreted, never simply given to you. Once you get this, heavy, tragic diagnoses like, I have an ontological crisis, or I am in despair, suddenly turn into mechanical problems with practical, manageable solutions.
Look at how incredibly actionable this becomes. If you're feeling Heideggerian angst, you don't need to solve the mysteries of the universe. You literally just need to recognize your bodily instability as physical and ground your nervous system. If you're feeling Sartrean anguish, you just realize that I must choose correctly is a false interpretation, and you remind yourself you can totally survive wrong choices. And for Kierkegaardian despair, see that I must be the right self isn't a necessity. Just by changing these rigid musts back into flexible wants, we free the brain from the trap the body set for it. Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway. Restore the awareness that ontology is interpretation. Your crushing existential reality is often just a physical feeling that you've temporarily mislabeled. What feels like an absolute truth about how reality is actually just how you are interpreting reality under specific, temporary, embodied conditions. You are the one applying the framework. I'll leave you with this provocative thought to ponder today as you analyze your own metaphysical literacy. The next time you feel the dread creeping in, ask yourself, are you truly feeling the weight of the universe, or is your body simply waiting for a healthier interpretation? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and remember, your interpretations are always yours to change.